Hello again folks, welcome back to the art. Week later, and it's still raining and I'm still wearing the same clothes. What's going on there? So we're going to look at continue with building up the short form, keeping again just with revision. So looking at a small section and taking it apart a wee bit. And then for those who are doing long form, the big repeat sequence. So not a lot, no new stuff in it really. Without further ado, I'll get started on short form. Okay, so last week in short form we had looked up to as far as the empty stance, the first empty stance, which is the way crane opens its wings. So this week we're going to have a look at the brush and the push step. Okay. Now something again I'm going to emphasise, which I'll do every week, okay, or for a few weeks anyhow, is this idea of getting of bow stance and alignment. Okay, so because we're going to be taking another series of steps, we'll have to look at this. So widening the stance and getting back in to your bow stance position, and as you can see there, centre of the kneecap, centre of the foot. Okay, so can't overemphasize that, how important that is. You know, so when we're stepping into our next one, it's the same thing. Centre of the kneecap, centre of the foot, and then finally with the last one. Okay, centre of the kneecap. So it's a very important element, and when you're revising, and especially if you're relatively new to Tai Chi, building that into your practice is good practice. It's safe practice. Looking after the knees. The knees do take, generally in martial arts, the knees can take injury quite easily, and they're hard to heal. So looking after them in the first place, this really helps to also strengthen everything evenly. So the knees, after a while you'll not even think about it, you'll be getting into proper alignment. So it's worth having a look, even if you just wanted to do that walking exercise, you know, and just checking it. Again, even here, kneecap, even though I'm bending that knee a bit more here to sink into the leg, kneecap still centre of the foot. Very important there, because obviously in a position like this, all the weights can down through there. But definitely in your bow stance, where you can have a wee look down, and you can do that just as a walking exercise. Okay, getting comfortable with it. And the more comfortable you are with the alignment, then you can really play with it a wee bit, you know, making everything really nice and slow. The whole step up, you get your balance into that point, you can really then take your time, stepping up heel to heel, stepping out diagonally because you got that alignment there, but making sure then when you're forward in your bow stance that you're checking that alignment. Hips square, kneecap centre of the foot. Okay, so I just wanted to put that in there at the start because we're doing another bow stance stepping section. So breaking this down, again, just we're looking at the stepping sequence here. So we're going from an empty stance to another empty stance. So the first one on the ball of the foot. Now you've stepped in for that empty stance. If you remember the move before, you were in a bow stance. You've taken this half step and then stepped in. Okay, so considerably narrower than your bow stance. So what we're doing here, before we step back out, is we're turning the hips diagonal. And with the hips like this, it's a matter again of opening out to the side, putting the heel down, and then bringing your weight forward. Okay, so that's our first of three, just like Parting Wild Horse's mane. Turning the hips diagonal, stepping heel to heel, and out. And then the third one, third and final one. And then, just like you did for the first empty stance, half step, sit back, and this time when you step in, you put the heel down. Okay, so that's the only difference. First one, ball of the foot, second one, in the heel. Okay, so just do that coming towards you. So our first empty stance from last week. okay, on the ball of the foot. So the hips are square in the weight crane opens its wings. We turn diagonal and then open out to the side. And then the weight comes forward. Okay, so that's it back in our bow stance. And then the hips and foot turn. We come slowly into the left, step heel to heel. And then again, opening the hip out diagonal and forward. And then the final one. And when we're forward then, that's the third bow stance. Once we're in the left leg, half step, and then onto the heel. But the same principle applies. You're not relying on that left leg for balance, you root it down into the right. So let's look at that with what's happening with the hands. Okay, so different hand technique here in the brace knee push. So the first thing that's going to happen, so we're in our empty stance on the ball of the foot, there's our position. So the hands are going to come to the center, they're going to pass each other like this. So the right hand just below the navel, the left hand at the sternum. So you're familiar with this shape. Okay, holding the ball. As I turn the hips diagonal, the right arm's extending out to the side like this. Okay. Now in short form, if you're used to long form, this is a bit strange because in long form that hand will go on out, we keep our eyes straight ahead. In short form, the eyes will just clock that hand there, okay? You'll keep your eye on the hand, your eyes on the hand as we step out to the side. That's the arm folding, and there's our position for then coming forward. And in the brace knee push, the right hand pushes straight out, the left one sweeps down, just past the line of the leg. Okay, you'll see this better when I'm coming towards you. And then here, when we sit back, we're holding the ball. As we come forward, the left arm comes up, and as it folds, we're stepping in and out, and then as we come forward, this time the right hand sweeps down as the left hand pushes out, so the mirror of the other one. And then one more, we're just holding the ball by the time we're back, forward as the arm comes up, and as that arm folds, I'm looking at the camera when I should be looking at the hand. Concentrating on two things at once here. Okay, so I'll do it in silence in a moment just to show you that. So half step, and then pulling back, and this time the empty stance on the heel, and hands strum the lute. And hands strum the lute, basically what's happening is this right hand just reaches on out like this as you do the half step. And then it's at the centre, so it pulls in towards the centre. When I say the centre, towards your solar plexus. And as it does that, the left one comes up the outside. So both hands end up on the centre line, and hands from the lute. So we just do that without talking, so as we can put reliance on what's happening with looking at the hand as well, and following the hand. Okay, so from our weight crane, opens its wings. Okay, so briefly, this is also this principle that I'm going to talk about now is also in the part in Wild Horse's mane. It's what we call maximum yin. Okay, basically where maximum yin is in this posture, we just get into the opening just to show you, so there's no confusion. Okay, so where maximum yin would be is here. Okay, so as you can see, I haven't shifted any weight forward. I'm really rooted down into this leg, and then the yang posture would be the finish posture. Okay. I don't want to labour this point too much, but just to let you know that the maximum yin position in any part of the form is where all the power is. They're generally harder positions to hold. For example, it's much easier for me to stand here than it is here for a while. You know, you're standing here for a while, you start to feel it after a while, whereas in a yang position, it's easier to hold. Okay, so where a lot of the work is happening in the form, a lot of the effort. So it's really it's good practice to really just look at them and isolate them and see where they are. For example, in Parting Wild Horses Mane, what we looked at last week. So I'll just do a couple here. There's our maximum yin, and then it comes forward into the yang position. And again, just to show you on this side, there's our maximum yin. Even though the foot's down, a lot of weight hasn't shifted. Okay, I haven't committed myself forward. That's where the posture is really strong, and then it goes forward into the position. Okay, so I'm going to show you that now from a different angle. And we're going to look at it again, sort of coming towards you so you can see more effectively what's happening with the hips here, okay? So, where we left off last week, our empty stance on the ball of the foot, white crane opens its wings. So the hands pass. And when the centre turns, the right arm extends. There's me looking at it. As the arm folds, stepping out, there's our maximum yin. And then coming forward, the right hand pushes out as the left one sweeps down. As you can see, the left one clearing the leg, the line of the knee. Okay? And the right one push. So when we sit back, hold the ball. Okay, we're turning the hips. Forward as the left arm comes up, there's me looking at the hand again. As the arm folds, I'm stepping in and out. And there's again our maximum yin. For doing the second brush knee push. And then the third one, again turning the hands and holding the ball, turning the hips, sitting back, forward as the right arm comes up, as it folds, step in and out. And that's our final of the 3 brush knee pushes. And then from here, half step, see that just as if I'm offering you my hand. Okay, so that's what's happening there. Hand comes out and then draws in towards the centre, and as we come up onto the heel, the left one comes up the outside. So as you can see, the right one just in front of the solar plexus, not touching it, just a wee bit out from the body, and the left one slightly above. Okay, so hands strum out. So I'm going to do that one more time in silence from this position again back here. So, where's our empty stance? Where we left off last week. Okay, so we're going to leave it there for this week. As I was saying last week, it's really just about revision. No matter how much you know the form and you think you know the form, you can always break it down. Remember, I talked about this before, just the most of you, that every position you're in the stages there are potential postures in themselves. You know, like there's an obvious posture like this that you start off with. But then when we get into a position like this, there's another one. Our maximum in, there's another one. And again, get into the brush and push, there's another one. So you can break them down like that. If we do this next bit just coming towards you, there's a posture. Sit here for a while, have a wee sandwich, cup of tea. Here, there's another one. Have a wee read, stand here for a while. Here's another one. Listen to the rain for a while, hear the birds, and then your final coming forward. So it's treating it like that, learning the form like that, breaking it down to that extent, and obviously it's about linking all those together. It doesn't look like a series of different postures, just looks like one full move. But the idea is you want to get all those points and become familiar with all those points. This will vastly improve your form. So that's it for this week, and I'll see you all next week, or as I said before, you'll see me all next week. And have a great week, folks. I hope you're all enjoying our beautiful summer. Where would you get it? Over here, of course. And I'll talk to you soon. Okay, so long form, part 20, long form. My God, we're getting on with it, aren't we? So last week I had talked about this big repeat section that's coming, and the big repeat section basically is stuff that you've already done in part 2. Okay, now I've talked about this before in form. When you come to a point, like for example, I've been using anytime I come to grasping the sparrow's tail and going, it's like you're back in part 1. So this is like you're back in part 2 for a considerable amount of time. This time, okay. So if we look at it so this is going to have to be a few different angles here for this one. So initially we'll work on this line that we finished on last week. So our last position last week, and again I'll be doing this with a few different angles. So our last position last week was this last repulse monkey. There were 3 repulse monkey steps. Now remember what you do at repulse monkey in the last one in part 2 is this turn. Okay, so holding the ball, left hand at the sternum, right hand below the navel, and then getting that heel out, putting the foot down diagonal, bringing your weight forward into the right leg, putting that left foot round, and diagonal flying. That's what you would do in part 2. What you would also then do in part 2 is the half step. Okay, stuff you've done in part 1. Okay. So again, all out of part 1 or 2, same thing. The shoulder press, and then the white crane opens its wings. Okay, so this is all stuff you've done earlier on. Okay. So remember what you did in part 2, when you came back into this position, you went down into needle C bottom, you come up, and you went into fan through back, you did this chop and turn, and then parry, push, that's the straight parry, punch, and roll back. Diagonal parry, push, step through and punch, and then this wee separation, ward off, pressing down with the right, and grasping the sparrow's tail. This brings you right back to ward off, roll back, press, separate, sit back, push, sit back, look left, sit back, look right, and then single whip. And in part 2 you would do 4 cloud hand steps. This time you're going to do 2. Just the same way, just normal cloud hand steps. 1 and 2, and then you would come out of it the way you do in part 2 with a single whip. Okay, so big long repeat section there, which sort of brings us up within earshot of the end of the form of part 3. A few bits and pieces before we get there. But a great section. It's like a big breath of fresh air, because you don't really have to think too much about what you're doing here. You know, there's been a lot of work in the previous weeks, looking at stuff like the Fair Lady works shuttles, the snake creeps down, the gold cockerel stands on one leg. There's a bit of work involved in all that, and then you get this big section where you're really taking yourself back into part 2 again. Okay, so I'm going to do that again in its entirety, just without talking, and then we'll have a look at it from another angle. Okay, so back to here. Okay, so I'm going to look at that from another position, probably another couple. Whatever way you do this, sections of it are going to be facing away, so I'll do it from another couple of positions. So we'll look at it from the last repulse monkey. Okay, so all out of part, just the way you would in part 2, with this step out and moving into the diagonal flying, and then the half step, and sinking the shoulders and the elbows, and then stepping in for Tai So, the step up move, turning the hips, right hand to the groin, left to the bicep, stretching out, and there's your shoulder press, out of part 1 or part 2. Again, weight crane up and swings, part 1 or part 2, and right up to the Bruce knee push and half step, which are in part 1, part 2. So after the half step, then we're down into the knee seat bottom, and this is you back in part 2 again. Coming up in the fan through back, chop and turn, and then the straight parry, the punch and roll back, the diagonal parry, push, step through and punch, and then that'll be separation, ward off with the left, press down with the right, sweep and step, and finally to finish that section to here, and then you know where you are. You have the grasp in the sparrow's tail. right up to single whip. And then the way you would go into the cloud hands anytime that you've done it, either in part 2 or part 3, is move here. And the cloud hand steps, of which there are 2, just 2 normal steps out to the left. And then the way you would come out of cloud hands normally, into single whip. Okay, so I'm going to do that moving away from you now. So there's our last position for the false monkey. So this is a straight parry, push, punch and roll back, diagonal parry, push, step through and punch, separation, ward off with the left, pressing out with the right, and then sweep and step, which brings us back up into grasp with the sparrow's tail. Ward off, roll back, press, separate, sit back, push, sit back, look left, sit back, look right, and single whip. And then 2 cloud hand steps. And the way you would just normally come out of cloud hands to go into single whip. Okay, so we'll leave it there for this week. Revision. And if it's new to you, again, just have a look at it. It doesn't do any harm. It's what's ahead anyhow. So we are creeping towards the end of part 3. There's a lot of repeat in part 3, which sort of makes it quicker when you're working through it. I've probably said this many times. The only confusing thing about part 3 is what repeat section am I in, you know, because there's that many often. Something like 7 grasping the sparrow's tail, for example, in part 3. So I hope everyone's well, and I look forward to seeing you again sometime. I will be in touch about that. Okay, so have a fantastic week, have a fantastic summer, make the most of it, and I'll see you next week. All the best.